All right, let's put our 1600 together. It's here's all our parts over here. We got our engine back in the stand, all cleaned up. Got our other case-half over here on the chair. And I think I'll leave the camera here for a little bit. We'll go over some parts. And some of the guys wanted to know the cost on some of the stuff. So let's go over some of that. Now this is a budget rebuild. This is assuming that you already have an engine. So we're not going to factor in the price of the case or the piston cylinders or you know, any other hard parts that we might reuse over. The cost we have here is the cam bearings, the rod bearings, the main bearings, a gasket kit, a hardware kit which is optional, and I do believe that's about it. Oh, we put some rings on here too, a set of rings. So we'll start with the rings. Rings for 1600 typically are running the $35 to $40 range, depending on where you shop them. You know, you can pick a hone up. I like a bead hone, get a good crosshatch in the cylinders. If you take them to a machine shop, sometimes they'll use a torque plate, torque the cylinder down in an old case and hone them for you. That's the best way. That's how Scooter does it. Machine shop costs will cost you. We didn't do a lot of machine work here. The only thing we had machined was the case, and the only thing we did was put case savers in it. That's $180 to have the case savers installed. It might be cheaper or it might be more where you live. A gasket kit tends to be around 30 bucks with the flywheel seal. 8 pushrod tubes, which we don't have here. Pushrod tubes are right around $2 a piece. We covered the rings, we covered the gaskets. Rods, mains, and cam bearings are going to run you right around $70, maybe a little over. And the case hardware is right about 24 bucks. If you buy the nice nuts and the lock nuts for the oil pump and the lock nuts for the main studs. So that's about all we have here. We didn't buy a whole lot of parts. And we have reground lifters and a reground cam. You can pick a regrind up for like right around 42 bucks. And I think lifters are about $24. So we're probably under 400 bucks here. Machine work's the main expense on a Volkswagen. If you need to have your head splay cut, you know, or if you need to have your case machine, that's usually where you run into the money. Alright, I'm going to take the camera and move it away from the parts over here, and we'll go over a few of the parts real quick. We got the lock nuts here. We got our case half nuts. We have our cylinder head nuts, our cylinder head washers, our wrist pins, our oil control valves, and we have some keepers for our pistons. And we have an oil pump set up over here and some cam gears. So let me get assembly on this. We move the camera onto the motor, and we're going to go ahead and assemble. I'll tell you what I'm doing as I'm doing it. First thing we're going to do is install our dowel pins for our bearings. If you're going to buy these aftermarket, you want to make sure that they're not too long. A lot of times the aftermarket ones are too long and they can compromise the bearing. By compromise the bearing, I mean smash the bearing. Dowel pin doesn't sit low enough in the case, and it hits the bottom of the bearing and it smashes the bearing. Alright, we're going to install our bearing next, center bearing. We got the right one here. Put a little Earl on that. A little green oil. Kindle. Okay, that's the only bearing that we're going to install. We're going to do our cam bearings. We're going to do our lifters next. Oil them up good. You want these to fit the case and spin nice in there. A little oil in each one of the lifters. Cam bearings are next. Oil. I don't use assembly lube, some guys do. I don't like the way it makes the parts drag. Can't tell if you got a problem or not with it. And yeah, so it's personal preference. We're going to stick our cam in here and make sure it rotates good. That's good. We'll put our cam bearings in our other case half over here. We're going to run a single thrust bearing in this. If you're running a performance application, you'd run a double thrust bearing. We're going to run a single. No reason for a double thrust bearing in this application. Alright, got our crank over here, we got our cams in here, we got our bearings. We're ready to install our crank next. Get the crank off the stand over here. Put a little Earl on this. There we go. With the right rods, they'll be situated there. Okay, let me get my hands wiped off and we'll position our bearings. This is pretty critical, this part. And make sure you line all your bearings up. Rotate your crank where it's happy. A happy position. There's that one. You'll feel the bearings fall on the dowel pins. Push it down with your hands. Make sure all your bearings are tight on your pins. So where you want to lay your rods over to the side. Rotate the crank where they're flat. There we go. Now we're going to take our other half of our bearing before we install it in the case. This is why I always say leave this bearing out. That way you can check and make sure your crank's in the block. Shouldn't rock at all. It should be steady flat like that. When you grab the bearing, there should be no movement here. If you put this bearing on like this and you have movement, start over again. Check your alignment of your dowel pins, make sure your crank's down in the saddles. But this bearing can't rock at all. It should sit completely flat on here. Alright, we're good there. I'm going to go ahead and install this bearing in the other case half now. Actually, we'll leave this bearing out for one more minute. Let's put our cam in, and then we'll check it one more time, and then we'll call it. Put these on. These come in the gasket kit. These are your main stud seals. There's going to be 6 of these O-ring type seals. They go on your main studs. You don't put any sealer on these. Just dry will work just fine. And make sure you get them seated all the way down into the main saddle. That one's wanting to stop. Just push it down, roll it. You guys know how to roll them down. There you go. So somebody was asking about the cost. Want me to break it down for them. We're going to assume that we have a motor already and you're just freshening your engine. That's basically what this video is about. Rebuilt set of rods is $90. They put a new bushing in and size the big end. My guy will charge you a little more if you want everything shiny. He'll glass bead the rods for you. I don't like the glass bead engine parts because it's bad enough trying to paint a car after you sandblast it, much less an internal engine part. So anyway, and I save a little money. So that's that. We've got 80 for the or 90 for the rods, 40 for the cam, 25 for the lifters, 75 for the rods, mains, and cam bearings. Dot to dot. One dot goes between the 2 dots on the crank gear. And you'll find the timing marks on the crank gear opposite of the keyway. So if you're having trouble spotting it, it's always opposite of the key. We're going to put some lube on this bad boy. I don't like to use break-in lube because it changes the way the motor feels. If that makes any sense to you guys. I like to rotate the motor with the camshaft in it, make sure that everything's compatible. But it's not going to spit my cam out, front or backwards. And we want to make sure our lines line up again. Boom, perfect. So this side of the case is pretty much done. We have our bearing here, our assembly sitting flat. So now we're going to install our main bearing in our other case half. So always leave the main bearing out until the end. This is one way you can check and make sure your assembly's laying in here correctly. If your bearings aren't lined up, this bearing won't sit flat here and it'll rock or move. You want to make sure that this bearing's completely flat and has no movement. So we're good there. Let's go ahead and install it in the case over here. Alrighty. We got our cam bearings in here, our main bearing. Let me install some lifters in this half. Let me move the camera over here so you can see what I'm doing. Move this a little closer. Get some lifters here. Make sure your lifter's moving, your bore's good. You know, sometimes you have to move the lifter around to find a happy hole. Alrighty. We're going to have to put our lifter locks in place here. These are little clips that hold the lifters in, so you can turn the case over and install it onto this half. Alright, let me put some lube over here. Our bearings all lubed up, lifters. Now we're going to put a little sealer on the case. I like the copper, ultra copper. Johnny, my friend Johnny Marks, likes the right stuff. And I was going to use a little of that and try it, but it's the wrong stuff for me. That stuff's expensive. So we'll just stick with this. If you got $16 for the right stuff, go ahead and get that. Johnny says it's good. I don't know if it's that good, but he says it's that good. So Johnny builds a good motor, so I wouldn't think that he wants his shit to leak. So I don't really have a problem with this stuff. I just thought I'd give the right stuff a try, and this is too much money for me. Too rich for me. So some things I have a hard time spending money on. I know this ultra copper works very well. It's what I use on my drag car. I don't use any gaskets on the exhaust, on the turbo. Just this stuff. And I've never had failure. You know, the turbo gets pretty hot. Now you want a thin bead on here. You don't get carried away with the silicone. Got some sort of bug crawling on me until it's summertime again in Florida, boy. You guys hungry? A little bit of paint right there. Probably wouldn't hurt anything, but I might take a chance. You want to know how long this motor would last, and I would think 100,000 miles, no problem. It's all pretty good stuff in there, nothing that's questionable. Yeah, a lot of the problem with Volkswagens is people use the wrong fuel in them. They require high test fuel because of the temperature they run at and the fact that they're air cooled. They required 91 from the factory, and many people forget about that because, you know, that's high test now. That used to be regular fuel back then. High test was much higher on the octane. Putting the cam plug in, and you get a liberal amount on the cam plug so you don't have any leaks back there. And I usually double the silicone on the back of the case. Let me finish this motor and I'll feed you guys. Alright, so we got our case half over here. Got it gooped up. Let's focus back over here now. We'll bring the case and drop it together and bolt this puppy up. Let's see here. Sometimes you can squeeze the rods. You want to get them half-ass straight, give them a squeeze, and they should stay up. Should. That one doesn't want to. I'll give it a squirt of oil now. Give it a good squirt in there. Wipe the center main off. You don't want any oil on those. Got our bearings in, our cam in. Got everything looking good. It's the last chance you got. Take a look at everything. Make sure it's all in there. I think we're good. Got our cam plug in there. Got our bearings in there. We're ready to go. Oh. Normally it just drops down here. Here we go. Let me get my fingers in here and it'll move. There it goes. And that's it. Rubber hammer. Give it a smack. Rubber hammer. Let me grab the rubber hammer real quick. Pull your lifter tools out now. And let me get back on the right side of the motor here so I don't stand in front of the camera. Now we're going to put the main studs on first. You want to put a little sealer on the bottom of these, just on the bottom of the washer. So, a little sealer down, no sealer on the top, just a little on the bottom of the washer. Alright, next we're going to grab our nuts, install these. Some guys put these down and remove the washer. I don't recommend that. I just do it just like this. That's how I was taught. And it's worked good for the last 25 years, so we're just going to stick with it. Let's put the nylock up. Factory washer. We're upgrading to the bigger hardware here. These come with a 17mm case nut. We're installing a 19. These get torqued to 27 foot-pounds. Snug everything down and then torque it. Pulley. All right, let's put our 13s on now. Got our pulley dug up and still rotates real nice. Now we're gonna go spring washers. Should be a spring washer under every nut on a Volkswagen unless it's the exhaust. So the exhaust would be the only thing that doesn't have a springy. Now I'm going to put a couple, some sealer around these 2 studs right here. This is the cam journals. They can leak oil. So you want to seal those, put your spring washer on after you put your sealer down, and then put your nut right on top of it. Washer. We're using new hardware on this one just because I like that kind. I usually wipe the silicone off too after I bolt the case halves together. I put my silicone more to this side of the case than to the inside. That way when it squeezes it comes out this way, not into the case. Alright, we got a couple more bolts here. Ooh, long bolt. Long bolt. Put this over here. Hope that doesn't get in the way of anything. You can put some nylocks on here if you like. Dress it up a little bit. If you buy the Scat nut kit, it'll come with nylocks on the case half bolts too. I don't like the copper nuts on the case. I've seen guys use them, but it's not a really good idea because it's an actual lock nut. Just about complete our short block. We'll get these torqued and go from there. These are 13s. I believe there's 16 of them. One more nut. Excuse me. Pardon me. Alrighty. These are only 18 foot-pounds, so don't get too carried away. I just go around the perimeter of the case with these. These back here you don't want to over tighten. I've seen these studs pull out, and that's a real bummer when you get to this part of the case and start having hardware pull out. Ooh. I have a 13 wrench here. I'm sure this one won't work. Nope. Maybe some needle nose. There we go. Alrighty. Time now to make sure it still turns. Oh yeah, sweet. Let's go ahead and torque our 6 main studs down to 27 foot-pounds. Always back your torque wrench off when you get done using it so it's accurate. Okay. I don't recommend a extension on this. Just go ahead and torque them with just a socket and the torque wrench. That way you don't have any variation. Alright, now for the 13s, those are 18 foot-pounds. You don't want to over-tighten these. If you want them a little more, a little grabby here, so you can put the 15mm head stud nuts. And it'll give you a little more clamping power without having to over tighten the stud. Alrighty. Still spin over like that and without any resistance. There we go. Next thing I like to do is my oil relief valves. I'll give it a shot of oil down in there. Next is your plungers. Open side down, closed side up. Push your plunger in there. Short spring goes in the back, long spring goes in the front. Can buy an oil booster kit if you have low oil pressure. They do make some different valves for in here. On the race car, we take the oiling system outside the block. We regulate the oil pressure outside the motor. With poppet valves, it's a lot more dependable. These get tight and good. I use a screwdriver and a hammer. Make sure they're tight. Alrighty, so that's our 1600 short block there. I'll turn it back over, let it drip out the bottom. And there she is. Tomorrow we'll put the piston cylinders together, and we'll get the heads built, maybe, if I can find some good ones. I'm on my third set. I had a set all blasted up, and got on the second head, and the head was cracked. So I had to get a whole nother set out because the particular heads I had started on had been machined, and I didn't have any other heads with the same CC combustion chamber, so I had to get a whole nother set out. So that's where we're at on the heads. We'll get them done tomorrow. We've got a lot going on, waiting for cougar stuff. Still can't find any quarter panels for that. Everybody's got patches, and I think the only quarter panels that I found so far is the ones that Ron found used. So there we go. Yeah, I should turn over with one finger. Don't get your finger caught. That hurts like shit, and I've done that before. But anyway, there's our 1600 budget build, and tomorrow we'll do the top end if I get the heads done.